righty, good Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to week 12 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. I am Mike Chico Borman, joined each and every Tuesday from noon until 1. My good buddy Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. We're a little bit closer. Obviously, the weather colder and a little more blustery, so trying to conserve that heat. So, plus the just the holiday feel. Season's greetings, Nick. How are you?
I was going to say, do you want to hug? Like, do you want to cuddle here while we do the show for that
Well, you
hour?
would be the guy that would, you have more warmth with you.
I am known to be a heater.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't have much of a heater with my arm anymore, but
Right.
I can produce some heat.
Yeah, a little cold out there, but that's okay. It is late November on the shore of Lake Erie.
We still haven't figured that out.
Shores.
I've posed this question to a number of groups, shore or shores. Folks think, you know what, shores sounds right. But just because it sounds right doesn't mean that it's right. You know, the same people could make the argument that irregardless is the correct term when it is not.
I hate when people
So is it shores or shore? You let us know. Somebody out there at Merriam-Webster, if you happen to be tuning in, I'd like your definition on this.
It's cold in Cleveland. How about that? We won't even mention Lake Erie or shores. It's just cold.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Not a good week. Not a real good week for your Cleveland Browns. We won't dance around the issue. I think it's ironic, if that's the right word, Nick, that last week, and well-deserved, we gave Kevin Stefanski, a lot of folks did, a lot of credit for doing what he had to do, even though it was frustrating and, man, why isn't he going down the field? He knew, okay, bottom line is, at the end of the day, I got to get a W. And he did whatever it took to get that W. He knew he could lean on the defense. He knew that Pittsburgh offense, this was before, of course, they fired Matt Canada. But, he knew what the formula was. So, as we go back to Sunday's game at Mile High, better yet, we go back to preparations for the game at Mile High. You would think, and I know we talked about this second half of the show last week, that the Denver Broncos not being good against the run would most likely be a focus for the Cleveland Browns and the offensive game plan, but didn't quite go as planned, I guess.
Well, I am of the belief, this is my theory, it is unproven, but much like most of science, most everything is a theory.
Sure. You can throw it out there.
Yeah.
Nobody will dispute it.
I think somewhere in the air between Cleveland and Denver, the game plan or the logic that Kevin Stefanski so deftly exhibited in that win over Pittsburgh was lost. I don't know if it got sucked out of an open door,
high altitude,
if they accidentally flushed it down the toilet. And the power and the suction power on an airplane toilet,
oh yeah,
it's going right out.
You got to make sure you're not going down with it.
Yeah. But they definitely took the field without that in their arsenal, and I think Kevin Stefanski kind of proved that he had lost some of his common sense when he decided to dial up a reverse at the start of the fourth quarter of a one-score game, a 5-point deficit with a backup quarterback that you have actively benched and was only in the game because your chosen starter in place of Deshaun Watson was knocked out with a concussion. What do you do when you're running the ball pretty well against the NFL's worst running defense? Pretty well in traditional senses. You dial up a reverse where a receiver pitches the ball to a running back coming from a receiver position. What happened? Well, we know. It was as predictable as they come. A fumble, a turnover, a Broncos touchdown that, upon further review, was, in fact, a touchdown, and boom, the game's over right there. I don't care that there was still a quarter left. It was over.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I think that the fact that the Pittsburgh game, was right before, and so it was fresh in everyone's mind, and obviously we hope Kevin's mind, and I think we even said, this is going to be the formula for a little while as we're waiting for, and they're waiting for DTR to, make those strides. It's going to be a little frustrating. You're going to want them to push the ball down the field. Hopefully that's going to come with time. But get ready, because the formula that we saw against Pittsburgh is most likely going to be the formula certainly against Denver, the next game, and maybe the next couple. And it, like I said, it was just I don't know. It almost seems like he has this and he's done a great job this year, okay? Before I get all of you, I know that all you guys just want Stefanski fired. No, I just want some consistency. That's all I want. And at times, just some common sense. Because I feel like you had a great game plan against Pittsburgh. Certainly, there was some, circumstances beyond your control, but in the end, like you did what you had to do to win. And you get a lot of praise for that. With Denver, it's like you threw all caution to the wind. You had seemingly a blueprint to at least being competitive in the game, and you completely went away from that. So it's almost like Kevin has this thing where he's like, I know that you know
that I know
that you're bad against the run, but you're not going to fool me.
Yeah,
he does that a few times a year.
And we've talked about this. I think we even put up a clip from last week's show where we discussed this. And I felt even when watching him back, was I a little bit too harsh on him? He did do a pretty good job of coaching them to victory. But the same thing that showed up in the third quarter of the Steelers game, which is that he went too conservative and was coaching not to lose instead of coaching to win. The opposite was true in this game where he trusted his creativity too much. And it flies in the face of logic when you see that you are finding success. Now, statistically, Jerome Ford was playing, he had a better game than I think the tape probably reveals because he averaged 7.2 yards a pop, but there were a few handoffs that went nowhere. So I understand you got to mix it up. You can't be too predictable. And especially with P.J. Walker in there, the first thing he's thinking is, well, they know that we're going to hand it off to Jerome Ford. So why not change it up? But the thing is like it's such a high-risk play in a situation that you don't need to take that risk. And the Browns have done this in games on the road this year where they think they can rely on their defense. Their defense gets blasted early, and they're down multiple scores. It happened in Seattle. It happened again in Denver on Sunday, and then they start to claw their way back. But the key in those games was not hurting themselves. In fact, they lost the Seattle game because they turned the ball over, because P.J. Walker threw interceptions. You have to avoid that at all costs. And taking a high-risk play in that situation, when you have an opportunity to go down there and take the lead on the road in a game in which you haven't played well for a half, you can't botch that. You can't afford to get creative, and I think it just goes back to, he's done a great job coaching this team this year through everything they've dealt with. But it's the same thing we've talked about for weeks, which is every once in a while he just thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And whether it's the Harrison Bryant fumble on an attempted sneak with a tight end, or it's that fumble on the pitch. I mean, just the mistakes. Like the reason they went away from P.J. Walker is because they turned the ball over too much with him. And then what do? You give him a ripe opportunity to turn the ball over. And it was more than one play, but as the saying goes, 6 or 7 plays make a football game. And that was undoubtedly one of them. And it snowballed from there. Denver punt aside, or today's weather punt aside, it really did snowball. And now you're left wondering, is this the point where the season just starts to fall apart? Because there's more reasons than just the way they played to think that.
Well, and that's, you're exactly right. They're 7-4, so clearly they're in the mix. And we said going into this game, look, if anybody's looking at Denver, and I think if you look even a month ago at some of these games, you probably said, oh, you know what, Houston should be a W, or none of these are. I mean, like none of these are getting Chicago. That was a great game last night.
Probably still going to be a W.
Yeah, it's but all of these teams are any given Sunday. We've heard that mantra all season long. But I think, Denver, you knew that they were going to be a challenge. One, just playing them at their place is always a challenge. Now, DTR gets hurt in that game. DTR is in concussion protocol. For those that don't know, just as a reminder, the Browns already had this planned. They played Denver. They were going to stay out there. They were going to fly from Denver to L.A. They play the Rams this week, and they were going to train out there. So the news that we're going to get as far as who's practicing, who's not, today's the off day, obviously, but is going to come a little bit later than we would like. But as far as the quarterback position, I mean, it's, number one in everyone's mind. Nick, I doubt that Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and this is just totally my opinion, nothing I've heard or read, I doubt that DTR is going to be practicing tomorrow, their first shot to get on the field. And I think if that's the case, there's no question that it's probably going to be Joe. It's definitely not going to be P.J. Walker, and it's probably going to be Joe Flacco.
If they could have thrown Joe Flacco into a uniform and put him on the field on Sunday, they would have done it. Because I think they are as done with P.J. Walker as they could be, short of cutting him. And I understand why. I mean, he's an overmatched quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback. We've come to that conclusion based on how he played on Sunday and the previous games in which he participated. But It's a concern that because I standard concussion protocol, you can come back within a week, but usually like the time frame, the window, the expectation is like roughly a week. Sometimes guys will get concussed in a Thursday night game and be back in time for the Sunday game the following week when they have a few more days to come back. Sometimes a Sunday to Sunday it still works out. But more often than not, you see guys miss a game when they're in protocol. So there's no guarantee. And in fact, if you had to choose one side or the other, I would say the DTR does not play this week, which means that you may be preparing for Joe Flacco to play, which Browns fans are probably happy because it's not P.J. Walker, right? And this is all guesswork right now, but this is also a quarterback in Joe Flacco who's been on the team for like 2 weeks. and he's not a spring chicken. So the expectation is going to be low. And my biggest concern, more than anything, as I look at this remaining schedule, is where have the Browns lost games this year? They've lost at Pittsburgh, at home versus Baltimore, at Seattle, and at Denver. They're on the road again, so obviously you see 3 of those 4 games they had lost on the road. But all those games they lost were against veteran coaches with plenty of experience.
You know, the Rams are that was
Sean McVay.
Yep.
And I am very concerned that this is going to be another instance because I think Sean Payton outcoached Kevin Stefanski in that game.
Yep.
In which Sean Payton outcoaches Kevin Stefanski and the Browns get upset by the Rams. Especially the Rams are on a 2-game win streak. Different fashion. They had scrapped to win over Seattle. They dominated the Cardinals, but they're kind of starting to come together. Matthew Stafford is a quarterback that could take advantage of a defense that may or may not still be missing Denzel Ward. And we haven't even talked about Myles Garrett yet, which could be a huge factor.
Yeah.
So I look at all these games, and I think Rams this week, starting this week, then you play Jacksonville and Chicago at home. Now, Jacksonville's a toss-up. Chicago, I feel confident in the Browns' chances there. At Houston, where they've been a scrappy bunch, got to be a tough environment, but
They
that's
might
a
be a
rookie
playoff
coach.
team.
Yeah.
No.
Jets, I feel pretty confident about that considering their quarterback situation. Then at Bengals, a Bengals team that's probably going to have nothing to play for. So what I'm worried about for this Browns team, beyond quarterback, is the coaching matchup. And I feel like I may sound as if I'm being too harsh on Kevin Stefanski, who, as we've said, is doing a good job. But is he going to be able to stack against these coaches with more experience than him? Because so far he hasn't.
Well, I think let's flip this because coaches always say with players, I want to see consistency. And I feel with Kevin Stefanski,
Show me.
We don't see consistency.
Yeah.
We see
Well, the only thing that's consistent is that you're going to get that too cute moment every game.
Right.
That's it.
And now I understand that somebody might misinterpret that as consistency, as predictability. No, it's not that. I'm just saying, you can only do so much, but what you want to, the things that you want to emphasize, your strengths going into the game, certainly on the road, at Denver, against Sean Payton, you want to make sure that those are, at the forefront. And it just seems like, well, you know what? Everybody might think that we're going to run the ball, but we're going to try to air this thing out. And it's just, some of it just makes no sense. So he goes from that mindset against Pittsburgh, which ultimately got him the W, to, you know what? Everybody's thinking one thing, I'm going to go another way, and it blew up in his face.
And I realize that we're kind of playing both sides of the fence here because we did complain about how he went into a bit of a coaching shell in the third quarter of the Steelers game. And you're like, well, you can't have it both ways. And you'd be correct to a degree. What I think fans want more than anything out of Kevin Stefanski is, just like you said, consistency. Like situational decision-making that isn't so far out of the box that it ends up hurting your team. And honestly, this just hit me, but the idea of Joe Flacco playing for this team might be the exact antidote that we needed to cure this. It truly might be.
Here's what I think. I was thinking about this earlier today. Again, week 12 of the bold ball breakdown, the Browns falling to the Denver Broncos out at Mile High. They are staying out west. They will practice in L.A. at UCLA. Unfortunately, DTR, we don't know if he's going to be able to practice. Still waiting word on him. They'll be able to resume practice tomorrow. If he can't go, it's looking more and more like Joe Flacco as the Browns prepare for the Rams. I get the sense, Nick, now that you brought up Joe Flacco, if you go to Joe Flacco, you're not going backo. Can I say? Can I use that?
I'm going to go over here now.
That was right off the but I mean, if you go Flacco, you're not going back.
Once you go Flack,
yeah, there you go. Once you go Flacco, you ain't going back.
Well, so you're saying the DTR is out if that's the case? Because I don't necessarily believe that unless Flacco comes out and puts a Week 2 2022 season performance like he did against the Browns.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is even if it doesn't look so messy. He plays a clean game. Hopefully he's able to hit some throws down the field. And yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think we tend to think because it's Joe Flacco, your mind automatically goes back to years ago, and when he had that great stretch in the playoffs, like, oh, that's the Joe Flacco you're going to get. No. I've heard people say, well, you should have signed Nick Foles. Nick Foles over his last, like, however many games, 8 games, I think, through 12 picks. Like, so there's not a lot out there.
Don't talk to me about Matt Ryan either. He's doing a great job in the booth.
Thank you. Yeah, that was another one that was mentioned.
I was getting a lot of texts about that. Oh, we can't get Foles or Ryan. What do you like going to Goodwill for things that you need to be purchasing new? Do you enjoy that?
Well, maybe that's all.
I like finding deals. I get my Halloween costumes at Goodwill. There's a lot of great things you can find there, but I don't think I'm going to be purchasing a new blender at Goodwill.
I just think that if Joe Flacco ends up being the starter this week, not necessarily be saying he runs away with it and, oh, my gosh, he has an incredible game, but I think if he goes to Joe Flacco, it's Joe Flacco the rest of the year.
I think that there is a possibility if he succeeds. It's all results dependent, in my opinion. I think if he comes in and handles the offense in a professional veteran manner, which is what they've lacked, and everybody behind Deshaun Watson, even Deshaun Watson sometimes, then yeah. Because like what you get out of DTR right now is a young guy who's still getting his feet wet and figuring out his footing. He really is. Like and you can see it happen during games. It happened at the end of the Steelers game when he leads the game-winning drive. It started to happen before he got knocked out of that Denver game. He put together a nice touchdown drive prior to that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he's starting to figure it out. Statistically, it kind of looks like that. 14-29, 134 and a touchdown. His best passer rating of his career at a sparkling 73.1. Like, you're slowly starting to go upward, and I see why the Browns went to him over P.J. Walker. He's just a better-equipped quarterback. He's still handling it better as a rookie than Walker would. But Flacco is a completely different player. Not mobile. Older. Seasoned. Still has a pretty good arm. Does he have command of the offense? Is he going to make the right decision? Is his internal clock still fast enough for you to produce as a passing offense? Because what you cannot afford to do without Nick Chubb is become a one-dimensional offense. That's probably what motivated him, Kevin Stefanski, calling that reverse play against the Broncos, but you can't afford to do that against the Rams because the Rams, they may be short on talent. But they still got a hell of a quarterback. They got a good receiving core. Their running back group is just a bunch of guys that have been passed over. Royce Freeman, the Oregon legend. You got Kyron Williams back from injury this week. It's a team that is overachieving, and the main reason is its coach. And I think that the best antidote, the best defense for a well-coached team, especially one that doesn't know whether it should be good or not, is a seasoned quarterback who can manage a game.
You mentioned defense. We'll go to defense now as the Browns. Not good at Mile High on the defensive side of the ball, but obviously at the end of the game, all eyes, all ears, everything was, oh my gosh, is Myles Garrett okay? He said he heard a pop. He then said that he needed help getting his shirt on, and we were all just on pins and needles. Now, here's what I don't know, and maybe we'll have more updates, I'm sure, later today. I mentioned earlier that because they're out in L.A., we're going to be getting news a little bit later. But, you know, okay, there's no structural damage. Is he close to 100%? Is he 100%? Is he So I feel like that's great news, and it is, and he's going to play. Hell, he said it at the end of the game that, you know, unless it's fallen off, I'm going to be out there. But he needs to be Myles Garrett. And, you know, so we still await that news. The other news, you're talking about two of the best on this team on the defensive side of the ball, playing the best ball of their careers. The other guy being Denzel Ward. No disrespect to Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome did not have a good game.
No.
Greg Newsome, I know he wants to be outside and is pined to be outside at times. He's a good slot corner. And we can talk about, oh, it's great to have depth and all of that. It is. But you lose if a guy who's normally great inside has to go outside because Denzel Ward is out, your team becomes weaker. And I think we saw that against Denver on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a stark contrast from a couple of years ago when Newsome was a rookie and played pretty well on the outside. But sometimes the best way to evaluate a guy and his value to your team is to compare him against somebody. And the comparison isn't even Denzel Ward because he's entrenched on the outside. I think the comparison is MJ Emerson, who has arguably been a better perimeter corner than Newsome has been. And I know
you
Newsome
thought he would be the guy that
yeah.
matched up with Cortland Sutton, even with a healthy Denzel
because he's
Ward.
long, you know, and I just didn't like the way that they used their defensive backs in that game. They're down a few guys. I get it. But Newsome, the way he's built, kind of makes sense to play him in the slot, whether he likes it or not. He didn't like his role with Joe Woods' defense because he was essentially a linebacker playing in the slot. Like they were having him, you know, run fit and blitz and everything else that he's just not built for. He's done a really good job out of the slot in this defense under Jim Schwartz this year. It's just a bummer when injuries call, you know, guys into other spots that they don't perform. And that was one of the many weaknesses, I think. You missed Anthony Walker against the run. They were putrid against the run.
169 yards they gave up.
Not great. And that was probably the most shocking thing to me was just how easily Denver ran the ball down their throats, especially on that one of those touchdown drives. They just went right down the field, and they didn't even have to throw the ball. I mean, Russell Wilson finished with 134 yards, and they scored 29 points. Yeah. And everyone's going to look at the Wilson touchdown pass to Adam Troutman and his own touchdown run, and he had a great game. But the numbers don't always matter. It's more about what's working for you. And the Browns defense that is so highly touted did not show up. But again, I think it's unfair for you to sit back and think, all right, you have to do all the work for us. And especially after we lost our backup quarterback, we have to go to our third-string quarterback, and we don't run the ball when we're running the ball well. You guys really got to – I mean, at one point, and this has happened to me a few times this year with this team, I've sat back and thought they're going to need a defensive touchdown to win the game. And they never got that opportunity. Felt like that. You cannot count on your defense for that to win games.
The other guy, speaking of injuries, Amari Cooper, you know, it seems like he could play, but the pain's going to be very, very high in terms of ribs, and he's looking at cartilage and stuff like that.
He got blasted, and let me tell you, the areas between your ribs are more sensitive than I think you realize. We're going to silence this laptop going right now.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm telling you, say.
There we go.
Yeah. Just wanted to test the laptop.
Well, we got to make sure that the ads are running.
Yes, it is working.
You know, that whatever.
See, here it is. We were getting ready to show you this.
You need to put ad blocker in there, dude.
I don't know how to do that. You know I don't know how to do that.
YouTube's blocking ad blocker, which is kind of funny because one blocker is blocking another blocker, but that's neither here nor there.
It's good stuff.
It's
the space between your ribs, very, very painful. Have you broken your ribs?
No, but I actually, this is way deep in the weeds. Inside baseball, I have a back issue that goes through my ribs that causes the intercostal muscles between my ribs to be very tight. And I can tell you that, like, doing this on some days, I've gotten better at getting mobile lately, but even doing that can cause an immense amount of pain. It's just discomfort. You add in, like, cartilage issues and, like, actual injury, and it's got to be even more painful. And this is a guy that's running down the field. This is a guy that's taking hits in his midsection. It's part of being a receiver. So, I mean, the one thing I came away from this game more than anything was, oh, my God, does Denver play aggressively? They play like a team out of the 90s. I was like, I haven't seen this type of – I mean, they get penalized for it, but I haven't – Kareem Jackson's been penalized twice this year. Suspended twice this year for those types of hits. But that attitude, man, they bullied the Browns. I don't think we've talked about that. The fact that they won at the point of attack, and they imposed their will on the Browns on a physical level that I have not seen happen to the Browns this year, especially on defense. It's a defense that operates with all kinds of swagger. And they would look like scared dogs with their tail tucked between their legs.
When a team's able to run the ball on you, like Denver was able to run the ball on them, all sort of swagger.
And defensively, just drilling guys, knocking guys. I felt when Amari Cooper got hit, I was like, I saw that happen to Muhammad Massaquoi once. Different type of injury, but similar type of play.
I saw that one too.
Like that, and that's when the Steelers used to bully the Browns, which we talked about last week. The Browns had become the bully. Well, not on Sunday.
No,
he got bullied right out of the Mile High City.
That's the thing with this team this year. I feel like, and granted, a lot of this is because of injuries. The majority of it because of injuries, but just when we think the team has turned the corner as far as an identity, like this is their identity. They have a game like this, and maybe that's just part of a long season. I don't know. You tell me. But I feel like each and every time we think that, okay, this is their identity, they have a clunker of a game where it's like they just, a good defensive team isn't going to allow a team to rush on them for 170 yards.
Yeah, and, this has not been a team that's been in an identity crisis this year, thankfully. A lot of Browns teams have been in the past. Yeah. But it did feel like a game with the injuries that mounted where I sat back and thought this could be the beginning of the end for this team, because if you lose a number of key contributors and don't get them back quickly, and you're on your fourth quarterback, and if that doesn't work out, I mean, you lost your right tackle. You're rotating DeJuan Jones and James Hudson, which was strange. Still don't understand that. I would like an explanation for that. In fact, James Hudson false starts at a key play, and they immediately put DeJuan Jones in. It's like, why not just stick with one guy? Like, this is not training camp. This is not preseason. I don't need to see who's better. I know who's better, and it's not number 66. Stop doing this. And even as DeJuan has struggled at times, and maybe there's something to do with the run game there. I don't know. But what I do know is that if you lose a certain amount of key players, there is a critical mass that you do not want to fall below before your team starts to fall apart. And I was just very concerned with the whole Myles Garrett stuff, where I was like, man, if they lose him and they don't have Ward and they don't have a quarterback, they lost Nick Chubb, they lost their right tackle, Amari Cooper is down. Like, there's only so many losses that you can take before it starts to pile up and show and affect your team. And I felt the fashion in which they lost this game was going to cause one of two things. You lose a number of guys, you lose the next week, and your team gives up, which is crazy to even think about at 7-5 because you're right in the thick of it. Thank God that the Browns stacked up wins early in the season. Or you band together and you prove that, look, man, all this stuff that's gone wrong for us, we're going to go out and we're going to win football games.
And they, to their credit, I'm glad you brought that up, Nick. To their credit, as opposed to other years, previous years, this feels like a team that will be galvanized.
They would have folded 3 points earlier when they lost Watson, when they got blown out by the Ravens.
Right.
I mean, there's been a number of instances this year where I thought this is the week that it all ends for the Browns, when they were playing San Francisco and nobody expected them to win, and Walker leads them to a win. When they lost to Seattle in heartbreaking fashion. Like, there's a number, when they go to Baltimore and are not expected to win, and yet they go in there and make a huge statement to win that game. It just makes me wish Deshaun Watson was still playing for this team, because I think the ceiling is so much higher, but they've been able to overcome so many things. So there's nothing that tells me that Joe Flacco, if he's the starter, God, I cannot believe I'm saying that. That is so strange. That is so strange. Just take a second to process that, Browns fans. Joe Flacco potentially as your starting quarterback
and
in
once
the year.
You go Flacco, you don't go backo.
Oh, that is a new catchphrase. I feel like I'm on an 80s sitcom. What is it? Dynamite! That was the 70s. Right? I don't know. I wasn't alive then. You think about that, though. Like, that is insane. And yet, that might be the perfect guy for this situation when you're down so many players. Like a guy that can just get in there and say, hey, guys, I'm new here, but I know your franchise quite well. I've actually dominated you guys for most of the last 15 years, and guess what? I'm here to help you now.
I mean, let's remember Don Strock back in the 80s, 4th quarterback the Browns had to go to after Bernie went down, and gosh, it was it Pagel, I think was Pagel their backup there for a while. Yeah, and then you had Don Strock was on the beach working on the tan, and then it prompted the rock around the Strock tonight. Maybe a song is made about Joe Flacco.
That's the same era in which Burn became a thing.
It's a great song. Yeah.
So was that like an 80s thing? Did people just make everything into songs?
Well, they had a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah. Well, the internet wasn't right.
Yeah, there wasn't a
lot of room for experimentation.
Yeah. All right, so week 12 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. The Browns 7-4. Key game. I know they're all important, but key game this weekend as they get set to take on Sean McVay and the LA Rams, who now all of a sudden, like I said, let me emphasize this again. A month and a half ago, a lot of these teams on their schedule left on their schedule. And I remember doing this about a month ago, saying, well, that looks like a win. That could be a win, which I know is always a dangerous exercise.
Yep.
But now all of a sudden, a Denver Broncos team had won 4 in a row, now make it 5. The Rams have found new life. So this game is not going to be easy. The good news, we hope, is that Myles Garrett is back. Hopefully we're going to get Denzel Ward back. The quarterback situation, stay tuned. DTR, if he's cleared, would be on the practice field tomorrow. I think if he does not practice tomorrow, he's not playing on Sunday, and I think that's going to go to Joe Flacco, but we will see. All right, so the Browns fall 29-12. Get ready for the Rams. Let's go to the numbers that matter from the loss to the Denver Broncos. And Nick Shook, we start with the number 3.
Oh, no. I'm not prepared. Just kidding. Luckily, we're sitting right next to each other, so I could pull it up. All
you
right.
You could cheat off mine. I won't tell anybody.
My folder is up, okay? I'm blocking the cheaters out right now. Stop looking over here, Sally. It's not my fault you didn't study.
Did you ever get caught cheating when you were in school?
One time in the first or second grade.
Mine was in the third grade.
Yeah, and I was so mortified that I never even never once considered cheating again for the rest of my life. And the thing is I was a good student. Not to go on a complete tangent here, but like I learned to read when I was like way younger because my older sister taught me how to read.
Same here.
And so
my
like
grandma,
the first like 5-6 years of school were just such a breeze. Like you never had to study. Everything just came naturally. That the fact that I would ever even consider cheating was shameful.
I didn't study for a science test, which you say, well, back then, third grade, and I totally forgot about it. I freaked out. So I had my buddy in front of me who was very smart, and it was a multiple choice test. And if it was A, he'd go like this. If it was B, it was 2. Well, then I kind of like, he started going a little bit quicker, and then I lost track, so then I tried to get back on track.
And you just missed every question.
And then while I was getting back on track, while I was trying to get back on track and get on the same page with a timeout, teacher's like, what the hell are you guys doing? Trying to get back on track. You got a little ahead of me with our cheating scheme.
Look, we're just trying to signs, okay? These are legal signs. They're not being stolen.
You just go grade those papers and mind your own business. And
we're all going to pass. You'll get sterling marks. You'll keep your job. Everything will be good.
Didn't quite go that way. Numbers that matter from the Browns loss to the Broncos, 3. What do you got, Nick Shook?
Well, 3 would be a C on your multiple choice scheme there, but it was unfortunately the total of the Browns lost fumbles in Week 12, including 2 in the fourth quarter. We already talked about one a lot. It is the second game with 3+ lost fumbles in 2023 for the Browns. No other team has done that this year. So protect the football. One of the most basic rules of football. Protect it.
42.9.
Decimals, baby. Coming in early. We actually don't have a lot of numbers that matter this week because it was a painful weekend.
We don't really want to rehash this one.
42.9 was the third down conversion rate the Browns defense allowed versus the Broncos. That's nearly twice as high as their NFL best, 25.4%.
And the Broncos aren't that good.
Entering
I mean, I know Russ is playing a little bit better, and Javonte Williams is a nice back, but this isn't some juggernaut offense.
Yeah, the downside, though, is that, like, I'm right there with you, and then they're going to continue to win games like this, and you have to take them somewhat seriously. Like, you look at them on paper, and you think, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is just very in and out. Marvin Mims has, I think, played a bigger role in this offense than him. And then you got Javonte. But it's not a super strong backfield. But the key is Russ.
Samaje P. Russ. Yeah, key is and Russ. Now all of a sudden, Russ is he's back to chesty Russ. Like he's kind of he's walking. He's got a swag to him.
Yeah, they've won 5 in a row.
As Bohm would say, he's got a little drip to him. Is that a?
Nah, Russell Wilson is too corny to ever have any real drip.
Let Russ cook.
I just heard that word recently, and
welcome to 2016.
Yeah.
All right.
So would I have any? Do I have any drip?
Your color pairing is good.
Don't look. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I like the gray jeans. Yeah, that's good. I'm a big fan.
I got drip, kids. I got drip.
Yeah. I don't really have much drip. So
59, and this one. Yeah, this one was a lone bright spot, maybe.
David Njoku led the Browns with 59 receiving yards, which would be a bright spot for David Njoku, but a dark spot for the rest of the Browns at their leading receiver at 59 yards. It is his 6th game with 50-plus receiving yards. He's behind only a handful of tight ends in that category. Those tight ends are T.J. Hawkinson, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. So he's having a good year, even though he dropped a ton of balls 2 weeks ago and still had some drops in this game. It's just a bummer that that's your leading receiver in a game like that.
Final numbers, one we already referenced. It was ugly and, 169.
That is the rushing yards allowed by the Browns. That is the second most they've allowed this season. The other one being 172 versus the Steelers in Week 2. They lost both of those games.
Yeah, so those are the we flood. Basically, after we get to that last number that matters, especially after a loss like that one, we immediately just flush it down that high-powered airplane toilet. It just get it out of here.
Close the lid before you press the button.
You ain't going down with it.
That's what the illustration's for.
7-4, the Browns are, as they head into L.A. to take on the Los Angeles Rams, who now all of a sudden are starting to play good football. As we look ahead to the Rams, Nick, what has kind of been their, I don't want to say their turnaround necessarily, but what have they found in recent weeks?
Not recent weeks, just really the whole season. It's Matt Stafford. He's playing good ball. He's healthy, mostly healthy. He was fully healthy earlier in the year. He had a thumb issue that he aggravated earlier this season. I want to say it was week 5, might have been week 7. It was week 7. It was against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh came back in the fourth quarter to beat them in that game. And they lost 3 straight with Stafford on the mend. They went through a couple of quarterbacks. Stafford came back. Now they've won 2 straight. Different fashion. They were able to overcome an early deficit against the Seahawks at home. Statistically, it was not a great game for anybody, but they did what they needed to do, which is namely force a turnover in the fourth quarter and produce points off of it. Kind of a strange game. Would not use it as a measuring stick. And I wouldn't use this past week as a measuring stick either, because they dominated a Cardinals team that looks better with Kyler Murray.
They've tanked,
but
they're
still just not a good team. They lack weapons at receiver. Like, I know they have Hollywood Brown. He's never lived up to the expectation for me.
Trey McBride is basically their big. I think his most trusted weapon.
What really defined this game, and it was a lopsided score, and I felt like it was a lot closer than that everywhere but the scoreboard, is the Rams making key plays defensively to limit Kyler Murray, because Kyler had a touchdown pass, or he had a touchdown run early in the game, then he had a meaningless touchdown pass at the end of the game. But there were a number of opportunities in between where he had thrown well-placed balls, and a defender would just come in and get just a finger on it and knock it away. It happened with McBride could have had a touchdown reception. Yep. It happened a few other times. Just great defensive plays. And like the Rams won on the margins in this game, and then were able to build on that with a really strong offense. We know what the Cardinals' defense is. We saw the Browns dominate them when they played them earlier this season. So that's not really a litmus test for the Rams' offense either. But what you have to worry about is the offensive genius of Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, who is letting it rip like he did in his prime. He's playing great football once again. And a receiving core that'll sneak up on you, because you got Puka Nacua. Everybody knows about him now. Nobody knew about him coming into the year, but now everybody knows about him. Cooper Kupp's kind of operating in the shadows a little bit. Like, he's going to hurt you, but
still kind of
he's not quite there. Tyler Higbee had 2 touchdowns last week or on Sunday, and has been pretty solid for most of the year. But it's Tutu Atwell, the speedster that can take the top off of defense, is finally producing after they spent a second-round pick on him a few years ago, and then Kyron Williams, who was an absolute monster on Sunday in the passing game and in the running game. You cannot afford to get run on like the Broncos ran on you.
What's their offensive line like, the Rams' offensive
line? Well, it was
line?
kind of a mixed bag. Last year was terrible. This year it's been a little bit more solid. They have a rookie who is an absolute stud on that offensive line that is really helping. Steve, I think his name's Steve Avila is his name, and that's helped transform them. But more than anything, it's been consistency. They haven't had to shuffle as many guys around as they did last year. I mean, they lost guys left and right. Joe Noteboom they lost at left tackle, and that was trying to replace Andrew Whitworth. They had like 10 or 12 different starting offensive lines in the season last year, which was a disaster. They've been better this year because they've gotten some consistency up there. So it's not the best group, but they're playing fairly cohesively. The Browns can totally capitalize and get after Matt Stafford. But what they can't do is get overly aggressive, which is what I felt like they did in Denver a lot. On the defensive side of the football, they were way, way too aggressive, getting out of their run fits, out of their rush lanes, just not playing the disciplined type of football that we've seen them play so often, almost as if they thought, well, if we can just overpower them with brute force and that'll get the job done. And they got caught a lot by the Broncos. If there's a coach that's going to catch you,
I was just going to say that.
It's Sean Payton it's Sean McVay.
Sean McVay is he's going to bait you into doing that. I mean, maybe.
That's what they did to the Cardinals. They scored 2 touchdowns on screen passes.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're going to have to be very, very disciplined. As far as numbers that matter for the Rams, I mentioned 2. Obviously, go ahead with that.
2 straight wins for the Rams for the first time in 2023, so on the bit of a heater.
So much like the Broncos, Browns get these teams. They're playing
defense
good football.
Not as good as the Broncos defense.
4.
The Rams are 4-1 versus the NFC West. That includes dominating the Cardinals per usual. They're 1-5 versus all other teams occupying every division not named the NFC West.
This one was impressive. 15.
Yeah, he had 4+ passing touchdowns on Sunday. I think it's funny when a screen pass goes for a touchdown because you threw it like the shortest amount of distance possible to score, but it still counts the same. and that is the 15th career game with 4+ passing touchdowns. I'm telling you, man, Matthew Stafford got a bad rap last year because he was hurt for most of the year. And every time I put him pretty high on the QB index, people always get on me, and they're like, what do you mean, Stafford? Look at his numbers.
Is he a Hall of Famer?
He's got a ring, and he's probably not going to get another one with the Rams. Statistically,
I mean, it always goes back to...
He's in the Eli Manning group, I think.
Yeah.
He's in the Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning group.
Yeah, I never really thought about that comparison, but and Eli gets...
Dan Fouts got in.
Well, Dan Fouts put up unbelievable numbers. I mean, Dan Fouts' numbers were... Dan Fouts...
But when you think about Dan Fouts beyond the numbers, what do you think?
Didn't win a championship.
Yeah. Stafford won a championship. And he wasn't Trent Dilfer.
No, yeah. Stafford certainly has a gun. Dan Fouts, I think, though, was... I mean, that like, guys like him or Marino... They were just too good to leave. I mean, obviously.
I feel like we don't question Marino, but I feel like Fouts is a better one.
Yeah.
To throw in there.
Yeah. All right. What else we got here? 204, and this is a guy to keep your eye on coming up on Sunday. 204. I don't think anybody realizes who this guy is.
Kyron Williams, 204 scrimmage yards in a win over Arizona. That was his career best. That was also his first game back in like a long time. Like I want to say it was like 6 weeks. The last game he played was also against the Cardinals, in which he dominated them in that game. So, like, a little bit of a limited sample size. We'll see how he does against a better defense, but heck of a day for the kid.
And then plus 211.
And we're really piling on the Cardinals right now, but that's the Rams' point differential versus Arizona dating back to 2017. They own them, which means, again, I don't think you can take this as a one-to-one comparison in trying to prepare for what might happen in L.A. on Sunday. But I will say this. If it came down to the two LA teams, I'd much rather the Browns play the Chargers than the Rams right now, even if the Chargers have more talent, because the Rams are a better coached team.
All right, let me pose this question to you. If the Browns are without, it seems like Miles is going to play.
Mm-hmm.
If the Browns are without Miles or Denzel Ward, are they in trouble on Sunday?
Without both, yes. You're asking a lot of Zadarius Smith and Obo Okoronkwo to get the job done. And Stafford, Puka Nacua is a great route runner.
He is.
He's much like Cooper Kupp in that regard. And you're going to be dealing with more threats than you dealt with against Denver. You had in Higbee. I mean, they got 3, maybe 4 guys that could make you pay if you include Atwell in there, who's more of a big play, over-the-top type of guy. McVay will scheme up against this defense. It is going to be a serious test of Jim Schwartz's ability. And I think he got outcoached by Sean Payton last week. So you need those guys on the field. I think it's going to be much harder if you don't have them.
So on the other side of the ball, it seemed like it was a pretty clear-cut avenue to how the Browns would attack the Denver Broncos. Kevin Stefanski said, hold that thought. We're going to go a different route. What should be the game plan we would expect against the Rams defense? Is there areas to exploit?
I mean, you still have Aaron Donald on that defensive front. It's not – I'm thinking about the games that they've lost this year because Kenny Pickett threw them to a comeback win in L.A.
Yeah.
They got dominated by the Cowboys. They got beat by the Packers, but it was a no-show game that Brett Rippon played in. So, like, there's no, like, clear-cut way to do it because they're a middling team, but they're a middling team that'll catch you. Like, they remind me – they have a better quarterback than this, but they remind me of, like, the Mangini-era Browns when they went on that 4-game winning streak to end the year where they'll just, like, sneak up and catch you. Like, they caught the Patriots or they caught the Saints, you know, during this. David Bowens takes a pick 6 and you beat the Saints in the Superdome and everyone's shocked. They're probably a little bit better than that. They have a better quarterback than that. They have a better coach than that. But they are still lacking in talent in certain areas. So I think it's going to really come down to getting after the passer. It sounds cliche. It sounds very played out, but it's true. You are going to have to get after the passer first and foremost because if Stafford does not have time to throw and he's under pressure, he will make mistakes. He's throwing picks. You just have to harass the hell out of him. You have to stop Kyron Williams, but it's about more than stopping him on the ground. You got to be more disciplined defensively. I think it all starts with the defense for the Browns, and you limit your offensive mistakes if Joe Flacco's playing the game. Run defense-wise, it's been up and down for them. I think it's going to have to be a balanced offensive attack, and Kevin Stefanski's going to have to stay within himself. Not saying don't coach not to lose, but if Flacco's your quarterback, play to Flacco's strengths, balance it out with the run game. Stop all the nonsense. Stop all the trickery BS. Save for once or twice. You can start the game with it early. That's fine. You got a lot of time to make it up, but let's not do that in the third or fourth quarter when the game's on the line.
What stood out to you from Week 12? We had the Lions. I didn't see that one coming. The Lions. Okay, Jared Goff had a bad game the week before. He'll bounce back. They didn't bounce back. The Packers came out firing. Jordan Love first play, I think 53 yards to Christian Watson. What are some of the teams, some of the moments that stood out in Week 12?
That was definitely a great game. I watched that one back again last night at about 2:30 in the morning, and I was locked in like it was noon. I was just like, let's go. This is an awesome start. What happened was the Lions wasted their early opportunities to get back into the game. Turnovers, man. Jared Goff, 3 lost fumbles. That
you're starting to get a little concerned about him?
Well, no, because if you get after him, Stafford's kind of like this too, but he's a little bit more mobile than Goff. If you get after Jared Goff in the pocket and contact him, you're going to knock the ball out. It's not that he's necessarily loose with it. It's just that he's good when he's protected well. He's very sharp, very accurate, does a great job. But when he's not protected well, it falls apart. You got to protect him better. And I think the Packers realized that, and they won. You want to talk about a team that won at the point of attack? Man, they won. There was surge, visible surge. Carl Brooks, kid from Bowling Green. I know a lot of people, Mac people, were like, man, we love this kid. Packers got a steal, and nobody else is really talking about it. I'm keeping an eye on him, and he's really coming on. And he was winning on the interior in that game a lot. So I think that it was just a matter of the Packers coming out hot, getting stops, turning those turnovers into points, just being the more prepared team on Thanksgiving. And the Lions, I'm telling you, man, the Lions, we talked about this. The two teams that I think are a bit fraudulent are the Lions, and I think the Vikings are to a degree, but I think the Dolphins are a little bit too. I just think that neither team has been tested, and we're going to come to see that. And I thought the Lions being tested by the Packers in that game, I think that's a little bit of a preview.
Do you have any doubts that Philadelphia is the best? Because it feels like, it's not pretty, but they, more often than not, they find a way. They find a way to get it done, and hey, at the end of the day, that's all you got to do.
I had a conversation with a colleague about this as that Bills-Eagles game was ending. They have not played a complete game this season.
You're right.
And yet they have one loss to their name. And that I respect more than a team that's blown out half of its opponents, because if you're able to win almost all of your games without playing a complete game yet, the fully realized potential of your team is frightening to me. Like, if you actually played a complete game, you could win a game by 50. I know the Dolphins have done that this year, but it was against a different Broncos team at that time. That carries over. That travels. Like, you can go win a lot of football games. And it's indicative of how they're built. Veteran group. Jalen Hurts is wise beyond his years, and they got talent on both sides of the football. They're deep. And they have a coach who's got enough. I think people hate Nick Sirianni, and I love Nick Sirianni. Not because he's, an OAC guy, Mount Union guy.
They just didn't like that Flower. He was dumb from that Flower conversation to start his tenure.
Yeah, well, he sucked in his opening presser, but you lose the opening presser doesn't mean you're going to lose all your football games. I thought Matt Rule lost his opening presser too, but that's neither here nor there at this point. I like Nick Sirianni because I think that he has the locker room right here. Like, they'll go battle for him, and they all understand the main objective, and they play like it. Even if they haven't played the best game, a complete game yet, I struggle to say that they're definitively the best team in the NFC because they haven't put a complete game together yet. But when they do, it's going to be real scary.
Couple things from the AFC North. Did you notice, was there anything noticeably different offensively after the fight? It did happen on a Tuesday, so I don't know if it was going to be anything drastic, a drastic change to that offense, but did you see any differences in how the offense ran minus Matt Canada?
So full disclosure, this is one of the games that I have not gotten to yet.
Okay.
But in talking to the people that I work with who have watched it, what they said was that the offense looked better, but they still couldn't finish drives. And that's kind of what happens when you score 16 points despite gaining 421 yards of offense. They almost doubled the Bengals, and yet it was a one-possession game till the end. But I think that the yardage total is huge to me because they could not move the football to save their lives. I mean, everybody ran that same highlight where it was third down, and the Steelers had to throw the ball against the Browns in the final minute of the game, and 2 minutes of the game, and Kenny Pickett drops back and throws a go ball to Deontay Johnson. He's like not even 20 yards within range. That's where their offense was, miscommunication. Deontay Johnson still got something going on. I don't know what the deal is.
What is it with them and Diva receive? Because Mike Tomlin is known.
I don't know, and I don't even think Deontay came in as a diva.
No,
I think
he had a great year last year, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think he's just frustrated. And I think, well, Pickens is a diva. I think
Yeah.
I think we've already seen that from him. So maybe that's just the type of receiver they get. But the fact that they put up so many more yards against a defense, by the way, it was only a few weeks ago when everyone was like, Lou Anarumo is getting a head coaching job because he's doing such a great job in Cincinnati. And now what? Like,
That was me. He's talking about me.
I know, but I've talked about it too, and it's probably still going to happen. He's going to be in consideration, but at the same time, like 421 yards to an offense that that got outgained in every game prior to this one. Like, the streak is finally over, Pittsburgh. Congrats.
I noticed Pickett to Freiermuth very early.
That was
in
a big
game,
part of
and-
it, is that they got Freiermuth back the week prior,
Yeah.
and they got him going last week. And that's a big part of unlocking this offense. They lacked that presence at tight end. The rest of the guys didn't do that great, when it came to receiving. Pickens 3 for 58, but the running game is becoming the two-headed attack that they wanted it to. I don't know if it's a fluke. I think we'll see more, but I think it's really promising for a Steelers fan base. I know people here hate them, that have been just. I mean, they sold 6-packs at local beer distributors, not liquor stores in Pennsylvania, but beer distributors that were called the Matt Canada Blackout Special. These are half off because you're going to need to black out to forget that offensive showing.
I don't know how he lasted as long as he did.
Well, we talk about how stability has always benefited the Steelers, but stability comes with stubbornness. It has to. Like, you cannot stay that stable for that long without a bit of stubbornness.
I totally believe, like when you heard right afterwards that Mike Tomlin said this decision was mine and only mine. Like, he didn't go to anybody. He didn't go to Khan. He didn't go to Rooney. It's got to go. He has to go.
In the last 7 days? It's Tuesday. He got fired on Tuesday. 7-8 days. We've seen the NFL's two worst play callers get fired. Matt Canada and Frank Reich.
Yeah.
Frank Reich, who gave up play calling, then took it back.
And Ken Dorsey wasn't great either. He got canned from Buffalo.
Yeah, but I think I still think he's much better than either of those two guys, right? But the fashion in which they were fired was so drastically different. Reich gets fired 11 games into his first year as head coach. Canada gets fired a year and a half after he probably should have been fired. It just speaks to the difference in organization. Tepper and the Panthers having no patience, Steelers having too much patience to a fault, but more often than not, that patience has benefited them, behooved them, if you will. And this time it burned them, and they realized the error in their ways.
I have not. Did you see the video, I'm sure you have by now, of Chris Boswell after the Steelers got a win and Canada, like they're walking through the end of the locker room out the tunnel, and he's like, he's past Boswell and the doors were, kind of between them. But, Canada's like, oh, yeah, good game. Good job, fellas. Good job. And Boswell, like, honestly didn't even try to hide it, didn't try to lower his voice. He's like, not because of anything you did. When your kicker feels that kind of that kind of I don't know, motivation to say what he said, and as loud as he said it, like the guy had to go.
The offense has been bad for 2+ years. No matter what he tried, it's just been ugly. They were disjointed in the Hall of Fame game last year. I mean, just getting plays going, getting out of the huddle and getting plays executed. The only downside to all of this is that Browns fans, suddenly the Steelers are going to have a competent offense again, or before long. The good thing is, from an NFL at-large perspective, now we get to actually evaluate Kenny Pickett again, because we had not gotten that opportunity with the positions they were putting him in. So I am excited to see. The Steelers are probably going to end up in the playoffs just because they're strong enough as a team to get there, and if their offense is better, that was their biggest weakness. But I'm excited to see how Kenny Pickett performs down the stretch here, because it's going to be an important offseason for them.
And by the way, Baltimore's sitting there at 9-3. They get the bye week this week. Granted, they lost Mark Andrews for the year, but they're kind of feeling pretty good right now. You get the late bye on top of where they're at. They're going to be, it's going to be tough. But
yeah, and you look at their schedule; it sets up too.
Yeah.
Rams, Jags, Niners, Dolphins, Steelers. So the last month could be tough. They could lose some games, but the Browns cannot afford to lose more games now. You've got to keep
Sunday.
pace.
Yeah. I think a lot of people penciled this one in. Not saying it was a gimme, but I think a lot of people thought they were going to beat Denver. They didn't. You better take care of business in L.A. You better take care of business in L.A. against the Rams.
Yeah, my message to Browns fans is show up, be loud. I know there's a lot of you out there in L.A., and if there's any of you around here who woke up this morning, saw snow, and said, get me the hell out of here, book a flight. You can find them pretty cheap, direct to L.A. Spirit does a red-eye. I think they do the first one out in the morning, too.
Is
I took it a
Spirit
lot
better
back in the
than
day.
ValueJet? I flew ValueJet.
The hell is
back
ValueJet?
You don't remember ValueJet?
No.
Oh gosh, ValueJet was like in the 90s.
Oh, that's why.
They had it was really, I mean, you flew cheap, but you knew why you flew cheap.
That's Spirit.
Actually, former Chargers, it's not a Rodney
Harrison?
No, not Rodney Harrison. This guy died, unfortunately, in a crash.
Oh, plane crash?
Yeah,
Oh.
on ValueJet. I can't think of his last name. He's a running back. But yeah, so I didn't know if
Spirit's bad. Frontier's bad. The budget airlines are awful, especially if you're my size, because like they don't make seats for people my size.
right.
I'm never gonna go viral in a video claiming that it's unfair or whatever, but as other people have done, I will say though that the flight's cheap, and when you're on a budget and you want to go to LA real quick, hop on that plane. SoFi Stadium's gorgeous. It's right next to my employer's office.
You probably still have a place there that you could put up on B&B or
I
something.
don't
right?
have a place because I don't have money like that. But if I did, I don't know what I'd be doing right now.
You'd be here off the shores. Of
Sure.
Lake Erie.
I'd find out I'd be getting to the bottom of Shores versus Shore. That's if I had that type of money. But go out there, check out the stadium, be loud for the Browns. They need this win.
Follow him on Twitter at the Nick Shook. You can also catch him NFL.com. Does great work there. Also on the NFL Network. He will join me again next week for Week 13 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. Browns falling to the Broncos. Need a W against the L.A. Rams. We'll know more tomorrow as news leaks out. And again, keep in mind, because they're practicing out there, probably the news coming in a little bit later. But Miles status, Denzel Ward status, DTR status. Is it going to be Joe Flacco time? One more time before we get out of here. Once you go Flacco, you ain't going backo. We'll be backo in just a few moments with the second hour of the Chico Borman Show. Got a little drip going on for the kids out there.
Oh, no. Now he's just really trying to drive me out of the
And
studio.
and we'll be back. We got Fair or Foul with Mr. Bombastic, and got some college football to get to as well. So more to get to. It is the Chico Borman Show, Hour 2 upcoming right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show. So Week 12, bald breakdown in the books. We will have really have a much more definitive idea of what Sunday is going to look like for the Browns after tomorrow's practice. I think the great news, we were all breathing a huge sigh of relief late yesterday afternoon when Myles Garrett, the shoulder was structurally sound. But I guess what makes me feel good about it, and I said this during the breakdown, like, is he 100%? It sounded like he's feeling much better because they said, like, oh, no problem, he's going to be good to go on Sunday. So that leads me to believe that the pain that he had on Sunday, where, again, a trainer or somebody had to help him put his shirt on, that has subsided. I'm sure he's probably taken some medication. Maybe they adjusted it. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. But him being on the field Sunday is a huge, huge deal. And also, hopefully this Denzel Ward, they are a different they're still a great defense, and they're still a great secondary. But Greg Newsome is much better suited for the slot. He's just I know, at times his first year, he was not bad in the outside, but, Denzel is that true. Sometimes we throw that around too much. Lockdown corner. Denzel Ward truly is a lockdown corner. Desperately need him back in that lineup as well.
Chico, I felt like Cortland Sutton was just such a mismatch for Greg. Like, the length alone, Sutton had such a huge size advantage on him. And
it seemed like, because remember, last week when we did the breakdown, Denzel Ward had not gone to the injury list yet. And even then, Shook was talking about MJ Emerson lined up against him because he is longer, he is more physical, and that didn't happen. But the bottom line is, look, you have two of the best players at their respective positions in the entire game. And when Myles Garrett is on the top of his game and when Denzel Ward's at the top of his game, like, honestly, those two guys right now, when we talk about this defense playing at the level they're playing, yes, Jim Schwartz has plenty to do with that. But what also has a lot to do with it is that Myles Garrett is taking it, if possible, to an even higher level, and Denzel Ward, same thing. Okay, he's going to miss. I think there's this notion. I saw this stat. And, Bone, we might have to look this up here at some point before we get out of here. But we all talk about Denzel Ward and how many games he's missed, and it feels like it's like a boatload. But in his career, he has, I think, been eligible to play 91 games or something like that, 91 games, and he's played in like 76. And that's still a decent amount of games, but I would have thought that number was a lot less. I would have thought that number was maybe in the low 60s. But it was like 76 out of 91 games he started. That's not that bad. But I think it's, when it happens, and I think it is one of those where you're going to get him every year. He doesn't really go out for long periods. But I don't think there's any question. They're going to need him, absolutely, positively need him for the home stretch. Too important. What do you got?
Well, what I'm seeing here just off NFL.com in terms of, I haven't seen I haven't done the math in terms of how many total games he could have played. But it looks like he's played in 76 dating back to 2018. So just real quick, running through the years, starting from 2018.
That was the number. That's the stat.
13 games, 12 games, 12 games, 15 games, 14 games, and this year 10 games played.
So it's like, so that stat that I read this last week sometime, that out of a total possible of 91, he's played in 76. That's really not that bad. I mean, for a guy, the thing is, we go back to the play that I think he got hurt on. He had to make that play. I mean, if Pittsburgh gets a first down, that's an entirely different scenario possibly playing out. He went, I think it was Jaylen Warren that he hit. And Jaylen Warren's a solid 230, 240. Denzel Ward is just not very, he doesn't weigh a lot, but he's still going to be try to be physical. Obviously, as far as locking down guys and being a cover corner, he's as good as they get. But they desperately need him back. We will see. We will see what happens on Sunday. But I think I think Sunday against the Broncos was kind of an alarm bell for fans. I don't think they were expecting to see that, and not that anybody, myself included, was expecting to see the Browns, blow them out, because it's on the road, it's mile high. But you didn't expect this, to see Denver basically blow the Browns out, and that's exactly what happened. And yeah, I know you had injuries and whatnot, but man, 29-12, and he just completely. This is with Kevin Stefanski. As much as I love him, and I do think he's a good coach, and I do think he deserves a hell of a lot of praise for where this team is at right now, considering all of the adversity, all of the injuries. Why would you come out against a team that is ranked dead last against the run and just air it out like you're, the early 80s San Diego Chargers? Didn't make much sense to me. But obviously going to have to change things, and it won't be easy in L.A. against the Rams. So we shall see what happens there. All right. It is time on this Tuesday afternoon. We've got a lot of other stuff going on. My gosh, college football rankings come out tonight. Ohio State fans, you probably don't really need to watch for that. You can. It'd be interesting to see where I'm guessing they have them around 6. But anyway, it is time for another version of Fair or Foul.
Alrighty, Chico.
Yes. Boom.
Let's get it rocking and rolling. So I want to. You mentioned Myles Garrett, and I wanted to start there actually, because you talk about how it's a relief to find out that everything structurally looks good. But Stefanski also, if I'm not mistaken, used throughout the phrase day to day, which was something that was commonly used with Deshaun Watson. So I wanted to ask you if you've felt that it could be fair or foul to be concerned with referring to Garrett as day to day.
No, I mean, in another report, I heard that they think he's good to go on Sunday. So I think any time after something like that, where he can barely put his shirt on, yeah, I guess he's going to be day to day. But I don't. And if they don't, he may not practice tomorrow out of caution, and he doesn't really need to practice. May be limited on Thursday, and then you may see him full on Friday. But no, I'm not. It wasn't just the fact that they said it was structurally sound. It seemed like the entire attitude seemed to be like, okay, he's fine. He's going to be ready to go on Sunday. So no, I'm not concerned on that.
Chico, I came across this report, just moving on, commencing forth here on today's Fair.
Yeah, you don't have to say it. You just move right on.
Yeah. So John Morosi.
Morosi.
Okay.
That's all right.
They're not to be confused with the singer Morrissey.
Or Kenny Keiser.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, Kenny Keiser.
So Morosi is reporting that the Cubs and Reds are in trade talks for Guardians pitcher Shane Bieber. Now, I guess this is kind of a two-parter, but first off, I want to ask you, fair value, you expect Bieber to be dealt before the start of the season?
I can't. Here's the thing. I can't say definitively one way or the other because I don't know. Here's what I do know. I don't think the Guardians, and I know we've said this before, and we'll reiterate it here, I don't think they're just going to give him away. There's no reason to just give him away, even though at some point, yeah, you're not going to be able to pay him. So, I mean, I absolutely believe that, yeah, they're listening to anybody. I mean, anybody. They're picking up any call from any team. But I think they have in mind, Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff I'm speaking about, they have in mind who or what they want. and what kind of return they're looking for. And I think some of these teams might be trying to play he was hurt and he's getting up there. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so we wouldn't have it for. I don't think that's going to jive with Antonetti and Chernoff. So, I mean, what does that package include? I don't know. Therefore, I can't say one way or the other. But I guarantee you that yes, they are absolutely listening.
Fair or foul, this is the highest that Bieber's value would be all season.
Yeah, I'll go foul on that. The only thing, I mean, where it goes down, obviously if he pitches poorly, but let's say he pitches great, it is going to go down just because you're losing the amount of time you get for him. So in other words, like if somebody doesn't trade until the deadline, you only have him for half the season. I would say I think Bieber's going to bounce back. I think he's going to start very well, and therefore they might be able to move him for a greater package than they're being offered. I'd be real curious, though, to know what these teams, what they're willing to give up for him, because they don't want to get, they don't want to get fleeced in this. But I guarantee you, what they're offering is probably not very close to what the Guardians are looking to get back.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there, Chico. Now, with that, I guess, and to your point, like if he came out and he started the season pitching really well, I think his value would only go up, even though you're losing time, because he's showing that he could still do it.
Oh,
he
it would
still got it.
Yeah, well, I'm saying just in terms of the time, that's going to go down.
That's definitely something that will make him less valuable as the season goes on. With that said, and I know you, like, obviously we don't know what's being offered. We don't know what the Guardians are hoping to receive. But what are you hoping for? Are you hoping for, like, I imagine you're going to get some sort of prospects. Are you hoping for prospects that can make an impact this year, or are you looking more long-term in terms of dealing Bieber?
I mean, I want more help offensively. You want. So I think if you can find that outfielder and a guy who's close to being ready, if not major league ready. Otherwise, if it's not that, then yeah, it's got to be a plethora of. One thing we don't want, you don't need any more middle infielders. You're always looking for some arms because you can never have enough of those. But, I mean, it's clear they need some offensive reinforcement. So I think that really what they're looking for is somebody that's on the doorstep, if not already there, kind of like a Kyle Manzardo.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that, like, it feels like the window can still be there. If you have a nice offseason, you can bring in some pieces, you can make a run this year. Like, this division is wide open.
Yeah.
But I digress. Okay, back to football, Chico. So last year during the NFL draft, 4 wide receivers went, like, successively, starting with the 20th pick. And I saw it, and I thought it was just interesting to compare the numbers for how they've been doing thus far this season. Starting with the 20th, Seahawks took Jackson Smith-Njigba, and this is going into last week. He's up to 406 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Quentin Johnston, kind of a slower start in that crowded Chargers receiver room, and then of course you saw that drop touchdown opportunity a couple weeks ago. Coming out of that week, he's up to 183 yards and 1 touchdown. And then you had Zay Flowers, who I know we both liked as a weapon for the Ravens. He's up to 612 yards and 2 touchdowns. And lastly, Jordan Addison, who again made an impact. I had a few nice catches last night from Josh Dobbs, but going into that game last night, he's up to 647 yards and 7 touchdowns. Significantly better, I would say, than just about everyone that went ahead of him. I want to ask you, Chico, fair or foul, if you could do a redraft, would you take Jordan Addison out of those 4?
Like, of those 4, who would I take? Yeah, because I think even if you go back to that draft, I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba, his is kind of tough because he was injured.
Yeah.
I still think the ceiling's high for him. Jordan Addison, though, was there. I mean, you're talking about a guy that has blazing speed, a good route runner, and pretty decent hands. Boy, that would be tough because I do think a healthy Jackson Smith-Njigba, he just got behind. Look, this is the difference. Like when you're starting out, and you just get drafted into the NFL, if you have a lingering injury and you're not able to practice, you get way, way, way behind the 8 ball. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I still go back to that interview that Herb Street did with Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think there might have been one more, and they all, like Olave and Garrett Wilson, immediately were like, he said, well, who's the best in the room? And he's like, oh, it ain't even close. It's him. That's coming from Olave and Garrett Wilson. Like, whoa. So Smith and Jigba is the deal. He's just got to stay healthy and stay on the field.
Yeah, and I also think, it is a crowded receiver room out in Seattle when you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett getting the ball, getting targets as well. My last NFL question on today's Fair or Foul. So it's kind of a long clip, so I'm not going to play it, but Panthers owner David Tepper addressed the media, right? And he was asked about whether he wanted C.J. Stroud, and he confirmed that they were supposed to trade to the 2nd overall pick to take C.J. Stroud because they believed that Houston would have taken Bryce Young at number 1 overall. And then he kind of backtracked a little bit by saying that everyone in the building wanted Young. Quote, we are totally confident in that pick. Fair or foul, are you buying what David Tepper's putting down? Obviously,
what part?
Like, the
that
entire building was totally confident in that pick.
Yeah, I think even and I believe I was listening on the way in. I can't remember who it was a national show. I was listening to an interview with a writer down in Carolina, and he basically said that Frank Reich liked Bryce Young a lot too. Now, was it enough, like more than C.J. Stroud? Because remember, there was always that Frank Reich likes his quarterbacks, the poise of C.J. Stroud. He also liked the height. Remember, I brought that up, months ago about his prototypical quarterback. So I think that everybody was on the same page. The idea, though, that what did he say about David Tepper said he were going to trade down and take C.J. Stroud? Tepper's been the guy leading the charge for this guy all along. The dude needs to just shut up and get away. And it's just not healthy to have an owner meddling that much. They're not gonna do anything until David Tepper figures out what his role is, and it's kind of sad too. And Bryce Young might still be good. I mean, we do really jump the gun on this stuff that, oh my gosh, he's not good now. Well, he shouldn't be. C.J. Stroud is an exception to the rule. Like, guys are not supposed to just come in, and they don't come in and play that well. But just because Bryce Young didn't doesn't mean he can't. But is he broken? Is he in the right organization? Is he in the right situation? That remains to be seen. And my guess would be no, he's not, as long as David Tepper is meddling like he is.
Yeah, I certainly, and I agree that I think it's too early to make a decision on what Bryce Young is actually capable of, and he's in a very tough situation. Like, that team wasn't picking that high for a reason. It's not just crazy how good C.J. Stroud's been. It's been crazy how good the Texans have been as a whole. When you bring in DeMeco Ryans and how quickly they've been able to turn things around. I felt bad for C.J. going to the Texans at the time because I was worried that was going to be a tumultuous situation for him. So I'm glad it turned out the way it did. But I think, Panthers fans, they're in the thick of things right now. It's a little rough down there in Carolina. I want to move on to the college game now, though, Chico.
Yeah.
So Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward, he has hit the transfer portal, right? And he's received over 10 $1 million offers to transfer schools. Now, Ward was he finished 4th in college football in terms of total passing yards. Maybe one of the top names returning to college football as far as quarterbacks go this next season. Now, it has been confirmed that the following schools are interested: Miami, Texas A&M, Washington, Auburn, and Ohio State. Fair or foul, Chico? Cameron Ward would be a better option than Kyle McCord.
I mean, okay, admittedly, I haven't seen this kid play, but I'll just let me answer this more definitively as far as just the transfer portal in general, because what I'm hearing and what we're all hearing is that when that portal opens, and it's not going to be long. I think it's just a few days, right? When it opens, it's going to be like the wild. Like there's going to be a ton of names. Ohio State has to look at that. And I always laugh when people, look, it's a new day and age in college football. I know, I don't really like it per se, but it's just how it is. Kyle McCord, you don't know about. Keenholz, okay, great, but again, he hasn't proven anything. Air Nolan, great. If this is what great teams do, and if you're Ryan Day, I mean, let's face it, that quarterback position is very, very important. You're a national championship caliber team, and if you get the right quarterback, everything changes, right? Everything changes. So I would be willing. I think Ohio State, I'm not saying this kid, but I think Ohio State will absolutely, positively dip into the portal, and there will be a transfer quarterback coming in.
Yeah, and it seems like Ohio State brings in a transfer quarterback almost every year. I mean, they brought in one this past year, grad transfer, who didn't even really see any time. They opted for Lincoln Keenholz over him, but it's definitely something that Ohio State has shown to be very active in the past. I am so curious how, if it were to happen, how Kyle McCord would bounce back in this offseason. Like, what would you see him more motivated than ever? And would
Maybe
we see
he goes
a better...
to the portal himself?
Yeah, right. Him, Devin Brown, Lincoln. Curious to see how that might play out.
I mean, look, Kyle McCord, and I'm rooting for the kid, but he hasn't shown anything that like makes you think, oh my God, this kid's going to be special. Now, is he as bad as maybe some people in Columbus think he is right now? No, but this transfer portal has completely changed the game of college football. If you can think about the two guys that are battling for the Heisman Trophy, and I think now it's clear it's going to come down to either Michael Penix or Bo Nix. Both those guys
Not Jaden?
What's that?
Jaden Daniels?
Well, yeah. I mean, Jaden Daniels is in it, but I think ultimately it's going to be the winner of Washington and Oregon. But yeah, Daniels is in there. I don't think he'll win it. But again, you go back to Nix and you go back to Penix. Both those guys transferred. I mean, this is just where we are in college football. Like it or not, this is where we're at. So, if a guy like that emerges, and the chances are, especially now, because they are predicting a boatload of guys to be in the transfer portal, Ohio State's going to do their due diligence, and they should. There's no, well, hey, we promised so-and-so. Ryan Day's staring at a 3-game losing streak to Michigan. Should he be fired because of it? No, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. But is the pressure on? And does he need to do whatever it takes to get that turned around? Yes. And if that means a quarterback comes in from the portal, then that's what he does.
You did say something that I do disagree with, Chico, in that with Kyle McCord, you said he hasn't shown you anything to make you think that he could be special.
But
he's shown some flashes,
okay,
Chico. Give him some credit.
But he's not blowing anybody away.
It's not consistent enough.
Yeah,
he's not doing it enough.
Okay, he's not. Yeah, he's okay. That's all he is.
PJ Walker in it out there.
He's okay. Yeah.
Sometimes he makes the big throws, and other times he doesn't. And that is fair or foul.
Thanks, Bill. All right, we come back. We got the rankings coming out. First of all, the rankings show comes out tonight in college football. What the Buckeyes, let's be clear on what has to happen to set up this weekend for Ohio State to get in. I know I don't necessarily want to talk about it either, but keep in mind, nobody wanted to talk about it last year, and then they went out and they did what they did to Georgia, and that really, think about why there was so much optimism even after that Michigan loss last year. It was because they played the way they played against Georgia, and it was like that was their springboard. If they don't get back in, this is going to be a long, tough winter in Columbus, because this is what, and, there's a bowl game. Maybe they play Louisville in the Orange Bowl. Nobody cares about that. And most of those players, at least some of those that are going to be going to the NFL, are probably not going to be playing in that anyway. So how this shakes out will at least give you an idea of really what absolutely positively has to happen for Ohio State to possibly get in to the NCAA playoff. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more Chico Borman Show until 2 o'clock right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back, folks. If you need bet credits for football season, the Big Play Network is presented by Tipico Sportsbook. The Tipico Sportsbook app has your traditional bets like the money line, spread, and point totals, but you can also lock in player props and check out our Big Play Boosts every single week to back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. Get in the action, load up for football season using the promo code BIGPLAY100. That'll get you $100 in bet credits on us plus a $30 dog pound bet. Again, Big Play 100 is that code word. Bet with the Big Play crew all season long with Tipico Sportsbook. Okay, so the college football rankings come out tonight. Georgia, obviously, number 1. Michigan, 2. Washington, 3. Florida State, you would think. I mean, Florida State, they can't. I know they're without Jordan Travis, but they can't take. I don't think they can take that spot away from them. They're going to end up playing Louisville in the ACC championship game. Could Louisville beat them? Yeah, again without Jordan Travis. But if Florida State, I mean, basically, if you're the committee, you want chalk. You want Georgia to beat Alabama. You want Michigan to beat Iowa. I don't even know if I'll watch that game. The Big Ten championship game, and I don't even know if I'm going to watch it because
I would love to see Iowa give them a good fight, though. I would love to see them take it to the very end, OT.
No, I
don't know how much I'm going to watch either, but I'll definitely keep an eye on it.
If I knew, and if I at some point I see a score and it's like, I want to see it, but I mean, my God, it's good and bad. Like, I hate the fact that this is the last year that we're going to get, like, the game meeting so much like it did. I also hate the fact that it ended with Michigan beating Ohio State with the game, now meeting. It's still going to be huge. But, I mean, let's face it. There is a chance that beginning next year, Ohio State and Michigan could meet 3 times. They could meet late November. They could meet Big Ten championship game. They could meet in the national championship game if the brackets go out right. So, I mean, it's just this is going to be a whole new landscape. But anyway, Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Washington I think should be 3. Yeah, that makes sense. Florida State 4. Now, Ohio State. This is where it gets interesting. Do you put Ohio State? Do you drop Ohio State below Oregon? I mean, Ohio State's loss is to Michigan. Oregon's loss is obviously to Washington. So, those are 2 very good losses. I think the committee right now very much likes Oregon. I'd have no problem if Oregon was 5 and Ohio State was 6. I don't think Ohio State should drop below 6, put it that way. But anybody who, and again, I know this is still very raw from Saturday, so I get it. Like, you don't even want to talk about it. They don't deserve. And quite frankly, yeah. But remember, we felt the same way. Many felt the same way last year. I think it was Utah, USC. Well, USC's not going to lose to Utah, and then Utah lost to USC. Isn't that how it went? And then that got Ohio State in, and you're like, well, this is going to be a bloodbath. And then they damn near knocked off Georgia. And that really, I can't emphasize this enough. Them, even in a loss, them hanging with Georgia and offensively, like that was, Ryan Day, hey, I'm never going to coach again like I did against Michigan. You're going to see me coach like I did against Georgia until Saturday, and he kind of coached that way again. But that's what gave everybody I think the enthusiasm for the coming year. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen. Here's what we know has to happen for Ohio State to at least have a chance. Georgia's got to beat Alabama. Louisville has to beat Florida State. And Oklahoma State has to beat Texas. And Washington beats Oregon. So, if you're looking at, Michigan, obviously, yes. You'd be looking at Georgia. You'd be looking at Florida State possibly being knocked out. And that would at least give the committee reason to say, okay, Louisville beat Florida State. Florida State's out. If Florida State's undefeated even with Jordan Travis, that's where the committee's going to have to answer some long, hard questions. Because, yes, are they as good as Team B? Are they as good as Texas or Oregon without Jordan Travis? No, but they still won those last 2 games without Jordan Travis, and they are the undefeated ACC champion. So, but I don't think it's going to come to that. I think Louisville beats them. The one that I can't see is Oklahoma State beating Texas. If Oklahoma, and that has to happen. If Oklahoma State beats Texas, Texas already with 1 loss, now all of a sudden we've got chaos. If Oregon beats Washington, we've got chaos. Because now all of a sudden Ohio State, and again, you go back to that loss to Michigan, as much as it stings, and you say, well, Michigan's, granted they're going to beat Iowa. I'm just giving them that. They better beat Iowa. God, if Iowa. No. What's the over-under going to be for that? Actually, it should already be out there, right?
I would imagine so.
I gotta look this up.
Well, we're all going to be OSU Cowboy fans this weekend, Chico. Go OSU.
All right. Bear with me here while I get This is crazy. So, Iowa, the spread isn't crazy. Michigan's a 23-point favorite. I'm looking at every other championship game. So, Georgia is -6. Texas, it's 14.5. But 23, and the over-under is 35.5 in that Big Ten championship game. So, I mean, that's what's got to happen. Is it out of the realm of of possibility? No. But I just, can I see Georgia beating Alabama? Yes. I know that they're feeling good, right? And Milrow's been fantastic. But Georgia is on a roll themselves. Georgia's playing Georgia football. Georgia's going to be tough to beat. Could Louisville beat Florida State? They absolutely could beat Florida State without Jordan Travis. I feel like Washington, could they beat Oregon? Yes. Hopefully Dan Lanning doesn't continue to make stupid coaching moves and all of that sort of thing. But could Washington beat Oregon? Yes. But then Oklahoma State, anything can happen, right? But that's the one that I think is going to trip up. I can definitely see Georgia beating Bama. Louisville, I think, could beat Florida State. If Oklahoma State doesn't beat Texas and Texas gets in, then you're looking at you'd be looking at what? Georgia. You'd be looking at Texas. Well, no. Georgia, Michigan, winner of Washington and Oregon. Now, if Oregon wins that game, because I think the committee loves Oregon. I think the committee really thinks Oregon is one of the top 4 teams in the country, and maybe they do get in anyway. This feels like, because it's set up for no conference to get in more than one team if the chalk wins out. If chalk wins out, then, Georgia is the one team. Florida State's the one team. Washington and Michigan. And there's your 4. I don't think they would jump Florida State. There would be a lot of, Tallahassee would be on fire that night if Florida State won out, was undefeated, and got put in, get a second Pac-12 team or a second SEC team or Big 12 team got put in. So that's not going to happen. So there it is. I mean, otherwise, I think you're looking at Ohio State probably taking on Louisville, team like that in the Orange Bowl. Yeah.
That doesn't excite me. Do you think Maserati Mav would play in that game,
I don't
Chico?
know. First of all, is he going to come back? I doubt he's coming back. I mean, I know he said what he said. There's been a lot
I
of
think
guys.
he wants to leave on a high note. High note, though. End with the win.
Playing in the game. Yeah. I don't. If he's not coming back, I don't think he's playing in that game.
I would say that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at Louisville, and I don't know how many of those guys are not gonna play.
What are the odds you could get like Oregon if they lose? Like Oregon loses to Washington, could that potentially be like a Rose Bowl type game?
Well, but my understanding is, and it goes by like the bowl game itself has first choice, and I think. Well, I'd have to research this one.
Logistics.
Well, they do have their it's kind of like a pool. I mean, they have their choice of who they want, and of course Ohio State's gonna be way up there because of the fan base and ratings and all of that sort of thing.
But why would a bowl pick Louisville over like say Oregon if they're
well? But I think the Orange Bowl though, aren't they tied into the ACC champion?
Oh,
I'm saying if Louisville beat Florida State.
But also the Rose Bowl I thought was like a Big Ten Pac-12 thing, like oftentimes
Is
it had
it
been.
still?
I don't know.
I don't think they're absolutely like married to that though.
But the Orange Bowl has to be married to the
I believe. I'll have to
technicalities.
I'll have to look at that. I mean, obviously we got to wait for this to play out. Friday night's going to be fun. Friday night Washington Oregon's going to be fun. For Ohio State fans' sake, they want Washington to beat Oregon, so Oregon's not in the mix. You want Texas to lose, so they have 2 losses. They're out of the mix. Louisville beats Florida State. Florida State has a loss. Then they don't have their quarterback. They're out of it. Then now all of a sudden, if Georgia beats Alabama, Ohio State has a shot. I don't know. Right now, nobody wants to think about that, but they also didn't want to think about it last year, and that's that. But all I can say is this transfer portal, it really is going to be the wild, wild west. I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys in that transfer portal here in a few days.
It's like that scene in Rounders when Worm walks into the room chewing on his toothpick. He's like, a lot of action.
Yeah.
A lot of action.
Real quick, Cavaliers are in action tonight in Detroit. What is going on with the Pistons? I mean, not that anybody expected them to win the East, but they're 2-15. 2-15, kids. By the way, speaking of the Cavaliers, hopefully going to chase down Chris Fedor for tomorrow's show. But a lot to get to. Tomorrow's going to be a big day for the Browns out west because we'll find out is DTR able to practice. If he doesn't practice, I think they're definitely going to Joe Flacco. Myles Garrett, is he on the practice field? If he's not, that might not be the end of the world. Maybe they're just going to rest him. But we'll have a much better idea how Myles is, how Denzel is. And again, the quarterback position, where is DTR as far as concussion protocol? Gun to my head right now, I would say DTR doesn't practice. He's still out with the concussion. That was nasty looking, and it's going to be Joe Flacco. So, but we'll know some more tomorrow. Later in the day, as we said, though, because they are out west on Pacific Coast time. All right, we're out of time. Thanks to Nick Shook, the Bold Bald Breakdown. Catch it wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Also, the iHeart app, which we stream live, and you can catch those replays throughout the day as well. I'm Mike Chico Borman for Michael Bohm, all of us here at Big Play Sports. We will talk to you tomorrow. In the meantime, make it a great Tuesday, everybody. See you.